So you just downloaded last Epoch and you've logged into the game, and one of the first things that you've done is you've opened up your character stat sheet and you see all these different numbers and you're wondering what in the hell is going on? Why do some numbers change, some don't? How do they work? Well, there's nothing to fear, Boardman's here, and today we're going to go over every single thing on the character stat sheet. We're also going to hit crafting, synergies, class skills. We're going to hit up how everything in the game works so that you have a better understanding going in. So to begin, we're going to open up the character stat sheet with the letter C, which we have open here. And on this, you'll see that we have 5 stats. You have strength, you have dex, you have intelligence, attunement, and vitality. Simply hovering over these will give you a tooltip that usually explains in pretty good detail about what they are and what they do. In this case, I'm going to just read them off. Strength. For each point of strength, it increases your armor by 5% and improves skills that rely on the raw strength of you and your companions. A lot of skills in the game will depend on strength, int, and dex or attunement, and they'll give you usually about 4% more damage. Sometimes there's other effects, but we'll get into that later. Now for dexterity, we have each point of dexterity adds 5 dodge rating and improves skills that rely on skills, handling of weapons. Then we have intelligence. Each point of intelligence grants 4% ward retention and improves skills that rely on carefully studied magic. In other words, most likely the character mage, but the necro will use it as well. Anybody who uses spells usually needs intelligence, and you'll also notice that we have this ward retention. What's ward? That's a good question. If you've played Path of Exile, you know what energy shield is. It's a lot like that. Ward is simply a shield that counts as health that'll fill up over your health but decays at a certain rate. And we'll get into how fast it decays later, but in short, int helps you keep it for longer. We have attunement. Each point of attunement grants 5 elemental protections and improves skills that rely on intimate magic inside you and your surroundings. And vitality. Each point of vitality grants 15 void protection, necrotic protection, and poison protection. We have health. Obviously, health is the amount of damage you can take before death. When it reaches 0, you are dead. Mana. Mana is used for most skills. Some skills don't cost mana, but you need mana in order to cast skills that cost mana. Health regeneration. This is the amount of health that you will regenerate per second. Right now we're at 17, which means that we will replenish 17 of our missing life every second that we're missing that much life. Mana regeneration. Mana regeneration. The amount of mana that's regenerated per second. And movement speed. This is how much faster your character will move from the base movement speed. Then we have armor and protections. For a really detailed video on armor and protections, we currently have one already up on YouTube that really gets into it. But in short, what we're going to go over is armor and protections. This bottom number is going to be how much of that armor and protection you have, and the top is going to be a formula they use to dictate how much the resistance you have is actually going to mitigate the damage you take of that specific type. In other words, right now, if we were to take a lightning damage hit, we would reduce the damage of that lightning hit by 78% just from the lightning protection. There are other modifiers in the game that will reduce the damage even more, but just on your basic armor protections, this percentage is just how much you will deduct of that damage taken of that ailment. As this number goes up, this number will go up, and as your health goes up, this number will go down. There are 7 types. You have your armor, which is physical. You have your lightning, cold, and fire, which are considered elementals, and then you have void, necrotic, and poison. Additional defenses, we have block chance. This is the percent chance that you will to block a hit. You cannot block damage over time. This is strictly for blocking a hit. Everything hits unless it has a tag that does damage over time. We have dodge. This is the amount of chance that you will have to dodge a hit. When you dodge a hit, you take no damage. You completely dodged it. Stun avoidance. The formula for stun is the more avoidance you have, the less likely you are to be stunned. But the way the formula works is The mob does damage to you, you multiply that by 2, and then you take your maximum health and your stun avoidance and you divide that by that number of damage, and that's the percentage chance of you getting stunned. So the more health you have and the more stun avoidance you have together, the less likely you are to be stunned. On a side note, the more protections you have, it's the less damage you take, which means that the damage that is dealt to you is less, which means you're also less likely to get stunned. So there's two ways to go about not being stunned. Block protection is the amount of protection that will be added into a category of whatever type you got hit for when you block a chance. So for lightning, if you were to be hit with a lightning attack and you blocked it, you would add this 1471 to this 2604, and this percentage would go up massively on that hit, which means you would deduct more damage. A block hit does not reduce all damage taken. It simply reduces the amount of damage taken by your block protection added into whatever protection it was you got hit for. Glancing blow. Glancing blow is the percentage chance to have a 50% damage reduction on hits. This does not include damage over time sources. So standing in a pool of poison and getting poisoned, you will not reduce the damage of that at all having glancing blow. That said, glancing blow is one of the most important mechanics in the game. You will always strive to get 100% so that you will always have 50% damage deduction from hits. With that said, going over 100% doesn't do anything for you. It will go up as high as you want it to go, but there is only a 100% chance. So, when you have a 100% chance, you are guaranteed a 50% damage deduction on all hits. More than that doesn't do anything extra for you. Ward retention. Ward retention reduces the rate that your ward decays, and the formula is 0.4 times current ward divided by 1 plus increased ward retention. The way the formula works is the more ward retention you have, the slower that the ward is going to decay every second. Now let's get into damage stats. In damage stats, we have increased cast speed. This is how fast that you can cast spells. Increasing it makes you cast spells faster. Increased melee attack speed. As you'll see, we have 2%. This is completely based off of your weapon to start. So our weapon right now has a 1.02 attack speed. The base 0% is a 1 attack per second. If I went to my weapon right now, you would see that we have a base attack rate of 1.02. The 0.02 is the 2% boost, and it is multiplicative with other modifiers. Increased throwing attack speed. This determines how fast you can do throwing attacks. There are several skills in the game which will have the throwing tag, like hammer throw, shield throw, and skills like that. Critical strike chance is the chance to deal a critical strike with hits, not damage over time. Damage over time cannot crit, but to do a critical strike with hits that do not have any specific crit modifiers. The base critical strike chance is 5%. As you'll see, all of our critical strikes are 5% base, and this is the global chance. Now, the difference between global and not global is the fact that unless something affects everything, you're not going to see it pop up in your character stat sheet. So if you have a skill that says in the skill node when you use, say, swipe, and it gives you 20% more critical strike chance, that will not be reflected in here, so you will not see it. This will be the global chance. If you added melee critical strike chance or added critical strike chance to an item on your character, that's global because that will affect all your skills. So that will show up in here. There are two types of adding critical strike chance. There is added critical strike chance, which will be the base that it adds to, and you'll have increased critical strike chance, will be a percentage of what your base is added. So say right now we did 20% increased critical strike chance, that would raise this by 1, and we would have a total of a 6% chance. If we had a Sobna weapon and we added 5% base melee attack critical strike chance, then the base would go up by 5%, and you would have a 10% base, and then all your other increase would be an increase off that 10%. We have spell critical strike chance, which is obviously your critical strike chance using a spell. You have melee critical strike chance, which is whenever you do a melee attack, your chance to do critical strike chance. In the game, You will see affixes and passive nodes and other things that increase specific types. You'll have melee increased, you'll have spell increased, and then you could just have global critical strike chance increase. There is a difference between all three. Critical strike multiplier is the amount of damage increase. So you have your normal damage that you would do, and then you increase it by this percentage, a multiplicative. It multiplies it. So say you did 100 damage, but you crit, you would now do 315 damage. The higher your critical strike multiplier, the more damage your crits will do. Base spell damage modifier. This increases the base damage of spells. It's multiplicative with increases from all other sources, and it's commonly found on caster weapons such as wands. You can put this on almost anything, but your base spell damage modifier is going to increase your base spell damage. Increased spell damage is not the base spell damage. You'll have a base spell damage, and then in the form that will be multiplied by the spell damage increase that you have. This will increase the amount of damage that spells do. Increased melee damage will increase the amount of melee damage. Throwing attack damage will increase the amount of throwing attack damage. Then we have increased stun chance. Stun chance is obviously going to be the chance you have in a percentage form to stun an enemy. The formula for stun chance is 2 times 1 plus increased stun chance multiplied by damage dealt divided by health and stun avoidance minus 0.01. One of the most confusing formulas in here. But basically, in short, if you want to stun something, you want as much increased stun chance, and you're going to have a much harder time doing it against high health mobs. The more health or stun avoidance that a mob has, the less likely you are to stun, and the only way to increase the chance to stun is by getting higher stun chance and doing more damage. Very high damaging hits the more damage that you do has a much higher chance to naturally stun. So nukers and hard hitters will do more than somebody who's doing damage over time or a lower damage output. And then you have melee stun chance, which is the same as stun chance but with melee skills. Increased physical damage is the percentage of physical damage increased. Increased lightning damage is the percentage of lightning damage increased. Cold damage, percentage of cold damage increased. Fire damage, percent of fire damage. Void damage over time. Increased damage over time affects anything that you do that's damage over time. It could be of anything. It could be damage. It could be when you bleed an enemy, when you put an enemy on fire. Increased damage over time affects all of any skill that does damage over time. Defense stats. We have block armor. Block armor is the amount of armor that will be added when we block an attack. So right now we have a 32% to block an attack. If we did block a physical attack, it would add in armor, and it would add this number into your armor protection. Your mitigation on block for each of these stats is what this percentage that you'll see here is a higher percentage than here if you do have block protection. All this percentages is what this percentage would change to on a block, because it would be adding this protection 1471 on top of what you already have. So for instance, void, which is our lowest protection, we have 345. If we were to block a void attack, it would add this 1471, which is massive, and our void mitigation would actually be 71%. You can see how important it would be if you were to try and do massive amounts of damage deduction through armor and protections to get as close to 100% block chance as possible. But remember, block chance does not block damage over time. Damage dealt to attackers is when a mob hits you, the amount of damage that you return to them. This will ignore the attacker's defensive, which means that whatever number this is the amount of damage it will actually do. Then we have damage reflected. This reflects a percentage of the damage that you take. You still take the damage that you reflected. In other words, they still hit you for the same amount of damage, but a percentage of that damage will go back and hit them. Damage dealt to mana before health, as the name implies, this causes a percentage of the damage that you take to be applied to your mana instead of your health. Each point of mana shields 5 health. So let's say that you took 1,000 damage and you had 10% of damage is dealt to mana before health. That would mean 100 of that damage is going towards your mana, and since 1 point of mana takes 5 health, you would only lose 20 mana. Damage tilt to mana before ward is the exact same thing, except that it's going to do it to mana and then it would take it to your ward, which would be your shield. You have critical strike avoidance. This gives a chance to downgrade an enemy's crit on you to a regular hit. So if you have a 20% critical strike avoidance, that would mean that 20% of all crits against you would be downgraded to regular hits. It is possible to get 100% critical strike avoidance, and that makes you quite defensive because you can never be critically struck. Health gained on hit is the amount of health that you will gain on every hit that you do. Health gained on melee hit is the health that you will gain only on melee hits. Health gained on kill is the amount of health you will gain for every kill that you do. Health gained on block is the amount of health that you gain when you block an attack. Remember, that's only an attack that does a hit, not damage over time. Damage leached as health. This is going to be a percentage-based amount of damage that you deal that will be leached as health back to you. There are no caps. Melee damage leached as life. This is the amount of life that you can leech from melee damage. And spell damage leached as health is the amount of leech life that you have from spell damage. Then we get into minion stats. We have increased minion damage, which will increase the overall damage of your minions from any attack that they do, including damage over time. We have minion cast speed, which increases minions' cast speed if they do casting abilities. Minion melee attack speed increases their melee attack speed. Increased minion spell damage increases their spell damage. Minion melee damage is melee damage increase. Physical damage, lightning damage, cold, fire, void, necrotic poison. All of these will increase that specific type of damage. This will be the percentage of it. Increased minion health is the increased amount of health that your minions have on top of their base health. You have increased minion health regen. This percentage will be a percentage of how much health they regen increased. Minion dodge rating, this is the dodge rating of your minions increased, so they may have a base amount of dodge rating, but you won't see that here. If they add dodge rating in their skill trees, you will not see that here. This is basically just what you're going to have through your passives on your skill tree and your items. Minion critical strike chance. This is the chance, the base chance that a minion has to critically strike on a hit. Minion critical strike multiplier. This is the percentage of damage increase that a critical strike by a minion will do. Maximum companions. This is the amount of companions that you can have at one time actively. The limit, the base limit that you always start with is 2. You can increase this through other means such as items or passive trees or skills. Increased companion revive speed, how much faster you will revive them, and increased revive range, how much farther away you can be in order to still revive them. Then we have other stats. We have bleed chance. This will be a percentage chance to bleed. Now you'll notice that we currently have 0, but we have skills that actually do bleed. So this is the global chance. The only things that are going to increase this chance is if you have it on, say, idols, or you have it on your weapon or your equipment items, or in your passive tree. If you have it on skills, you're not going to see it here unless it says global. Bleed damage, this is the amount that a bleed stack will do over the course of 4 seconds. This damage will not be 78 per second, it will be 78 damage over the course of 4 seconds, applied, I believe, in intervals of every second. Poison chance, your chance to poison. Poison damage, the amount of damage you do with your poison over 4 seconds. Ignite chance, the chance to ignite an enemy on hit. Ignite damage, how much your damage will do over the course of 3 seconds. Increased shock effect is how effective the shock will be. So shock normally reduces the elemental protection by 100. If you have a 100% increased shock effect, that will change to 200, so you will actually reduce an enemy's lightning, cold, and fire protection by 200 for every stack of shock that you put on them. Chill chance, this is the chance percentage to inflict chill. Chill reduces the attack speed, cast speed, and movement speed by 12%, and you can stack it up to 3 times for a maximum of 36% movement and attack cast speed reduction. Slow chance, this is the chance to inflict slow on a hit. You can have up to 3 stacks of this on an enemy, and each stack will reduce their movement speed by 20%. If you have above 100% chance on any of these, you can do multiple stacks on the same hit. If you have, say, 150% chance, you will guaranteed put 1 stack on, and you will have a 50% chance to do a second stack. Blind chance, this is the percentage chance to inflict blind on hit. Blind will have their crit chance and causes them to aim erratically, often missing you with ranged attacks. And then we have freeze rate multiplier. Almost every cold skill in the game is going to have a freeze rate base number, and that number will be multiplied by your freeze rate multiplier to give you a freeze chance. So if your base freeze rate of a skill is 20, we have a 110% increase. It would now be 42 would be our base crit rate number, our chance to do freezes. We have potion slots. This is the number of potions you can hold on to. Health gained on potion use, the amount of health you will gain when you use a potion. Increased chance to find potions. This is obviously going to increase your chance to find potions. Then we have mana efficiency. This reduces the cost of skills, making them cost less mana to cast. Chance to chill attackers, chance to slow attackers, and chance to shock attackers. All these percentages will mean that when you get hit by a mob, what chance they have of being chilled, slowed, or shocked. Increased healing effectiveness. This increases the amount that you'll be healed from anything that heals you. Say you get healed by another player, or you have a skill that heals you, and let's say it heals you for 20 health. That 20 health will now be increased by 278%, meaning you'll be healed for a lot more. Increased cooldown recovery speed is how much faster skills will come off of cooldowns. And unique items picked up. This is just a counter that will actually tell you how many unique items you've picked up since you've made the character. Just a fun little toggle thing that it keeps track of. And that's it for the character stat sheet. And now let's move into crafting. Crafting is by far the best part of the game to me. I really love how they have introduced crafting and how it works in last Epoch. So if you open up your inventory with the letter I, you can also open up the crafting tab with the letter F. Now for crafting, what you have here is, as you go hunting, you find shards, and you'll pick these up and you'll see that they litter your inventory. All you have to do is hit stash materials, and all of these will instantly move over to the crafting tab and be held in this spot for you to use later. You also have a crafting tab inside of your inventory panel, and this is where you'll find your ruins and glyphs. Currently right now there are 6 total. You have 4 ruins and 2 types of glyph, and the way these work is you have a rune of shattering, which will break down an item, giving you a random number of the affix shards that it has for its affixes. You have Rune of Refinement, which will allow you to reroll the passive affixes on it to different amounts within its range. You have a Rune of Removal, which will randomly remove an affix that's on the item, but will add some instability. You have Rune of Cleansing, which will remove all of the affixes, and it will reduce the instability between 5 and 15, meaning that if you've crafted on an item, you can remove everything and actually get your chances to succeed on it a little higher for the next round. Then of your 2 glyphs, you have Glyph of the Guardian, which gives you a 25% increased chance of crafting success. Then we have the Glyph of Stability, which reduces the instability added by 60%, which means instead of guaranteeing to add 5 stability, you can now add between 2 and 5 instead of only adding 5, and 2 is better. So, instability versus stability. So when you have an item, and we'll start with a white item, say we put in the Traveler's Belt here. It has no affixes on it. So if I want to add something, I can go through all my list of things, and I'm going to be able to add 2 prefixes and 2 suffixes. So when I find one that I want, let's go with Necrotic Protection. You'll see I have a 100% chance for success. Crafting will add 5 instabilities to the item. So if I craft Necrotic Protection, this will reduce my stability by 5, meaning that the next thing I put on it will have a 95% chance. Now, For every tier that you go on, there's also a reduction of 5% chance. So if I add necrotic, for example, and I forge this, I now have a 90% chance with this to go to tier 2 because I have the 5% reduction in stability and 5% because I'm at tier 1. If I go to add something else, I'll actually have a 95% chance because it's a 0 tier. As you go up tiers, each one will reduce the stability by 5% on top of the 5% instability that you get from crafting an affix on. So if I added armor as well, I now will have an 85% chance to go with armor or necrotic protection, either one. And as you go to tier 2, all the way up to a maximum of tier 5, the percentages will go down. As the percentages go down, so do the odds of breaking it. And breaking it happens in 3 stages. From 75 to 100%, it's just a minor fracture. A minor fracture just makes it to where you can't craft on the item anymore. From 50% to 75%, you have a damaging fracture, which will randomly remove some of the tiers or reduce the tier levels or do nothing at all. If you have all T4s on an item, it could remove all of them and make the item not only uncraftable, but have no more of the affixes. And then from 0% to 49%, you have what is called a destructive fracture. This fracture makes the item useless. You can't use it anymore. You can't wear it. It doesn't do anything for you. There are 3 types of items. You have a white item, which is a common item and has no affixes. You have a magic item, which will have 1 or 2 affixes. And then you have a rare item that will have 3 or 4 affixes on it. 4 affixes being the max that you can craft on an item. As you can see on our belt still, we have 2 suffixes, and now we get to choose 2 prefixes. And you'll notice that the crafting window automatically updated only shows prefix. All the suffixes are whited out or faded out. And as we add these, if you use, as you can see, we were doing a perfect 5% chance for each craft. If we use a glyph of stability, we can actually make it to where that one we only lost 3% instead of 5%, so it saved you 2%. I like to use glyphs of stability until I get under the 80% chance of success, and then after that I'll start adding in our plus 25%. You can't use both together. There is only one spot for a glyph. You must choose one or the other. And now you can see we're back up to 100% chance, and it'll continue to go down. If we don't use it, you can see that now that we're under the 75% range, we have a 25% chance for a minor fracture and a 3% chance for a damaging fracture. We'll just continue on, and there's our fracture. We had a minor fracture, so now it's just uncraftable, but we're stuck with what it has. And that is crafting. Now we have skills in the passive tree in last epoch, and the way skills work is if you push S, you'll open up your skills and specializations. In here you'll have a list of all skills that you can use. If they have this little icon below it, which looks like a little bubbles connected with linked lines, that means that it has a skill tree. At release, they say that every skill will have a skill tree. Right now some don't, and so you only have the basic version of it. But you can have up here in your specialization slot up to 5 skills at one time. As you level with skills in here, they will level up to a max level of 20. And then each one of these has its own unique skill tree that you're going to want to put points into and build the way that you want to play it, or build it so it synergizes with other things and makes your build very viable. In the case of this build that we have going on, we're currently running a summoned bear, a thorn totem, we have entangling roots, we have avalanche, and we have storm totem. And the way we've built our bear, say, is that he's doing retaliatory thorns, which makes him do bleed, and we have poison stacks every time his thorns go out and hits, and he automatically retaliates with the thorns whenever he takes 30 damage. You could go up top and change it to where he has swipe and he does more melee damage. You could give him more crit chance. You can build him whichever way is working best with your build. You know, every skill here has its own tree, and it's very fun to play different ways and try different routes and keep going different ways and see how it synergizes with not only your play style and build, but with the other skills and the items you have on your equipment. Then we have our passive tree, and everyone starts off in the basic category of the class they chose. We are a primalist, so you have your base class. And what your base class is you have these nodes that you work your way up, and 1 point raises you up each tick line. Every big line here is 5 points, and you can get up to the top. You can put as many points in here as you want. You must put 20 points in before you can unlock your other masteries. And you can see some are linked, some are just in the open, so as you put points in, you'll unlock them. Once you reach the end of time and you go up the staircase, there will be a quest, and when you finish that quest, it'll let you choose which class it is that you want to be. In our example, with our class, we could choose to be a Beastmaster, a Shaman, or a Druid. We have chosen to be a Shaman with this particular character. What it does when you are mastered is you then get the mastery bonus. In this case, our mastery bonus is a -5 totem mana cost and +10 attunement. Our elemental protection is also doubled while we have a totem. A Beastmaster, on the other hand, would have +1 maximum companions, and you and your minions will deal 50% increased damage. The other thing that you get for mastering in a class is you unlock the top half of a tree. As you can see, you can put points in any of these. I have points in all 3, but I can only go to the halfway point, the 25 point line for the Beastmaster, whereas in the Shaman, which I mastered, the entire tree is unlocked, and the top half usually has some more potent skills that are directly meant for that class. When you have done all the quests in the game and reached level 100, you will have a total of 115 points that you can put into this tree altogether. And that is how the skills and the passive trees work. And that's going to be it for this video. I hope that I have brought some information to you that you did not know before, and that I have helped you in your process of leveling and enjoying the game of Last Epoch. Thanks.